Hello, everyone. Welcome to our another Java Groups meetup. It's a virtual meetup. Today we have an excellent speaker, MD Saim Ahmed, who will explore the fundamental idea of domain-driven design through compelling real-world case. A real-world use case. He will share how they tackle complex, evolving requirements to deliver scalable, value-driven solutions. Uh, as he takes up through the insightful case study. Please think about any questions you might have on this topic. We'll aim to address them during the session. And we also welcome all of you from all over the world. I'm pretty sure everyone joining from different parts of the world. I'm from Toronto, and Sam Pai is joining from Germany. Hello, Sam Pai, how are you doing? um your audio is not coming up. No, we cannot hear you for some reason. So that's something. Technical difficulty is something. Um, it has to really happen. Otherwise, how it is a virtual set event. We are not still getting your audio.
How about now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Nice.
Perfect. Finally. So yeah, how's the weather over there? How are you doing, man?
I am doing fine. Thanks for asking. I mean, the weather is pretty, I would say, so. It's cloudy, it's rainy, but it's actually better than a few days ago because it's pollen season, and if there is no rain, there are lots of pollen there, it causes irritation and so on and so on. But yeah.
I can understand. All right. Let us know where are you from, where are you joining from. All right. And this event will run this session at least an hour. And then if we have more questions, we'll try to, i- i- go as you have questions, but we'll try to wrap it up in 1 hour. So thank you everyone for joining, who are joining. And like I said, we would like to get a sense of our audience today. So feel free to share where you are joining us from in the chat. So if you are joining using the YouTube live, there is a chat button. Also, if you are joining from LinkedIn, you can comment on there your questions and also share your location. That way, so all right. Without further ado, let's get into the real session. So I'm going to share some by slides. First of all, let's see if I can do that. Can you share your screen
Yeah.
again?
Yeah. Can you see my screen? The slides?
Yes, we can see your screen. Perfect.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll be offline. I mean, not offline. I'll be here back there at this stage. But yeah, take it over. Thank you, Simba, for doing this.
Yeah. Cool. Thank As Bozu mentioned, welcome everyone. So today we're going to talk about domain-driven design and what it means, what are the fundamental ideas behind domain-driven design through the study, through the lens of a real-world use case that we've encountered in my current employer. So, I mean, before starting, it's better to go through the introduction. So, yes, as Bozlo mentioned, my name is MD Sam Ahmed. I'm a Bangladeshi software engineer who's currently living and working in Berlin, Germany. I've been a software engineer for over 15 years. My primary strength lies in Java, of course, that's why I'm here. Um, Domain-driven design and distributed systems. So so whenever I think of domain-driven design, these are the concepts or things that comes to my mind. Um, so to broad division or broad ideas that domain-driven design brings, something called strategic design, tactical design, and there are things like subdomain, bounded context, entity, aggregate value, object domain event. Now, this is not going to be one of those typical introductory material on domain-driven design where I just read through the definition, show one or two examples, and then just we are just all happy and go our way. No, that's too boring because I'm pretty sure halfway people will fall asleep. So that's not the intention of today's session. Instead, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through a real life example of a business problem that we encountered at my current employer. I'm going to introduce my current employer in a bit. The problems that it caused and the solution to the problem is actually really a perfect way to describe some of the fundamental core idea of domain-driven design. So that's actually what we're going to do today. So, and we're going to do it in a way in like a storytelling. So just go with us. So we're just going to go through the how Kleinanzeigen evolve over time, so it's my current company, and how the business evolved over time, how it created problems along the way, and how we solved it. So, yeah. So it's the story. It's a long time ago. Well, really. So the story was like end of the real use case that we are going to talk about. It's a case study which we encountered in end of 2020 or beginning of 2021. So kind of 5 years, and in a city far, far away. Of course, Berlin to Bangladesh, it has a distance of 7,062 kilometer. Okay, maybe it's better to if I go full screen. Maybe see if I go completely full screen, so maybe that will actually be better for checking the slides. Yeah. So this is a story which happened a long time ago, 5 years ago, in a city which is Berlin, Germany, which is 7,000 kilometer from Bangladesh. And in this city, my current employer is currently has its headquarters, Kleinanzeigen. They're a powerhouse in Germany, and it's a leading classified websites here in Germany. Very popular. We have 33.6 million unique visitors per month in our platform. We have 450,000 commercial users who actually use this platform for various commercial activity. Um, we have we are number one in re-commerce. Re-commerce means selling second-hand goods and services in Germany. We have 40,000 pro customers. So these are our customers who sort of buy our product and uses our platform to sell their goods. Think of them like small shops who sort of like have an online presence and sell their stuff through our platform. We are number one in private listing for real estate and motors. So if someone wants to advertise a real estate apartment sale or a house sale, or someone wants to find a new tenant for their apartment, or someone wants to sell their second-hand Mercedes Benz, for example, a lot of those users actually use our platform to advertise their business. And we receive around about 714 million visits every month in our website. So that's my current employer, Kleinanzeigen. So in Kleinanzeigen, if someone wants to post an ad, they need to create an account, right? So this is a sample example user profile that is created when someone signs up for an account in Kleinanzeigen. This is a test account that I created for a demo purpose. The name of this user profile is seller. So they want to sell something via our platform. And this is how their public profile page looks like. And this seller has an ad in our platform that they publish. Now the texts are in German because, of course, we're a German company, and our platform is used only by German users. And so, yeah, I will go through the different part of this. So this is a real estate ad where our sellers trying to find a tenant for their 3-room apartment in Berlin. It has a 90 square meter area. It has 3 rooms. It has 2 bedrooms, and so on and so on. So when this seller publishes this ad in our platform, then let's say I'm a buyer. I'm interested in this apartment. What I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go to this green button that we have here. In German, it says Nachricht senden. In English, it means send a message. I'm going to send a message to this seller saying, hey, I'm really interested in your apartment. Can we arrange a meet? And so on and so on. And then we meet and then we discuss our terms and so on. So this is sort of like a very fundamental, very abstract idea about how Kleinanzeigen basically works. Now, our today's discussion actually revolves around this whole model. Now, I could have copied the Java code that implements this ad, this user, because Kleinanzeigen is built on top of Java. That's why I'm here in Java user group. um, but that would defeat the purpose, because the Java code, class, getter, setter, methods, and so on, we are actually gonna miss the big picture, the design of the system, which is actually where these inconsistencies or this domain-driven design is more applicable. So this is why I was thinking, what is the best way to discuss the design and at the same time talk about domain-driven design fundamental principles while not getting lost in the details in the Java code, right? Now, when I was in university, I was studying computer science, of course, but I had friends who were studying architecture, and I used to see them developing small models of huge buildings, right? Because their job is to define the architecture, create the architecture of a building. Now, in order to actually understand how the design actually looks, they created small replicas of really big building, and then maybe added one part here and maybe moved one part from there to there. So, and then they visualize how it would feel if this is actually then implemented in real life, right? So models, we use models to abstract things that we cannot really create practically, like big buildings, right? I'm going to follow a similar approach. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a simple model of this ad and users using stickies. So see this seller here, that the user profile, think of this seller as this simple sticky. So this sticky represents that user. And of course, we know that whenever we create a user in a system, this user has an ID, right? So let's assume that this seller, name seller, has an ID 123. And of course, you cannot really sign up for an account without an email address, right? So let's assume that this seller has an email, seller@kleinanzeigen.de. And this sticky, this red sticky that just popped up, this is a model for the ad that we see here on this right side. And this ad also has an ID, because we need to differentiate between different ads, right? So not only a single user creates ad in our platform, millions of users creates ad in our platform, and we need to track them differently. So each ad has an ID. Of course, ad has title, ad has a description, and this ad also has the owner ID. So who created this ad? We also need to track that, right? And this is represented using this field called owner ID. And as we can see, owner ID is 123 because the user who created this ad has ID 123. And interestingly, as we can see, this ad model also has an email field, which is same as this user. Now, you would wonder, why do we need this email here? Because we have this owner ID here, 123, and this user is 123. Software engineers who are present in this session today, they'll immediately think, how about we join user and add, and we can already get the email. The reason it was designed like this, again, whatever, now I'm going to discuss a lot of stuff which is basically an assumption, because they were implemented years ago. Think of it like this model is actually the one that was created when Kleinanzeigen was founded back in 2009. So that's when Kleinanzeigen was first started, and that's when this whole ad and users things were created. And why something was done in long past ago, it's often very difficult to deduce in, let's say, 2020 or 2021, because as we know, people leave companies, knowledge gets lost, documentation gets outdated, and so on. So the best that we could do is only guess oftentimes. So an educated guess here is that this email is in this ad sort of duplicate, because Kleinanzeigen grew really fast. It really went from just having a small number of users to really a lot of users and a lot of ads. And when they grew really fast, joining two really big table oftentimes get bit time consuming. And I'm guessing is that to avoid that issue, someone decided to denormalize and put an email here. Now, why I'm spending so much time on describing the single field? Because the problem that we're going to discuss today, this email field has a profound influence on this problem. Now, definitely, these are not the 5 fields that ad has. Ad has many more fields, but for our discussion today, these 5 fields are important. So I'm just going to focus on these 5 fields. Then let's say we have another user, which is me. I'm the buyer. I'm now really interested on this ad, and I want to rent this apartment. So what I did is I posted a message. Hey, I'm really interested in your ad. Can we arrange a viewing for me so that I can check the apartment and so on? And I posted a message. So this is represented using this sticky below, where there's another user, which is a me. I have a user ID 152, and I've just sent an email saying, hey, and my email is Kleinanzeigen.de. Hey, I'm really interested in so on. So this is a very simple ad model, like fundamental ad model, which sort of like tries to abstract or try to create a high-level view of how actually Kleinanzeigen works. So when this, as a buyer, when I send a message, what happens is that the replies that I just posted, the message that I posted, the request to visit apartment, this message gets sent to the email that we have in the ad. Why it's been done, don't know. Historically, it has been like this. And on other words, we can say the replies is actually being sent to this user because they have the same email, right? Now, this is how Kleinanzeigen started. Very simple. User publishes ad, someone likes the ad, sends a message, they meet, they talk, and they arrange a viewing and so on and so on. Not only for real estate, also happens for other categories as well. Used cars, used furniture, and so on and so on. After a few years, Kleinanzeigen got really popular and people started using it a lot. Now, the way our business model works is that a user can publish an ad for free, but only up to a certain amount. Let's say, as a user, as a seller, this seller can publish maximum 5 ads for free. If they want to publish more, then they have to pay a fee. I don't know, maybe like 20 euro, 30 euro. I don't remember the fee right now. So if they, let's say someone is really professional and they want to sell a lot of stuff, then they have to maybe publish 500 ads. Then for 500 ads, if each one of them costs maybe 20 euro, then becomes 1,000 euro, right? That's too much. So what we thought, okay, if someone really wants to publish a lot of ad, how about we create something like a subscription for them, so that using that subscription they can publish, whatever amount of ads they want to publish. We create a subscription for 50 ads. So if you buy a product, you can publish 50 ads, or another tire product, which is like allows you to publish 100 ads, and so on and so on. But in order to track those, what we did is we created something called a business account, which is like a new concept, like a new model in our business. This business account also has an ID, right? Because we need to differentiate between different business accounts, because we have different business customers. And who does this business account belong to? This business account belongs to the seller that we saw before. And this is why we have the owner ID as 123 here. And this business account has another important field called ads published, where we track how many ads a business account has published using this business account, so that we know, okay, the user is allowed to publish maximum, let's say 5 ads, and they have published 2. They can publish 3 more. Or if they have reached their limit, then we block any further publication of ads. These are the 2 stickies that representing that concept. As I discussed, this tracks the number of ads published with this business account. Now, this is a commercial real estate customers, right? And commercial real estate customers are in Germany, they're basically companies. So let's assume that we have let's assume Kleinanzeigen itself is a real estate company, and a real estate company has owners, they have managers, but they also have a lot of agents. And these different agents are usually responsible for different real estates, because a real estate company doesn't have only one apartment or one building to rent out, but they have multiple apartments, multiple buildings to sell, to rent out, and so on. So they have different agents, and each agent is responsible for different sets of apartment. Now, what these companies want is that whenever they post an ad with their business account, the replies to this ad needs to go to a certain agent, because as we can see, the seller at Kleinanzeigen D, the user who created a business account with us, they are most likely the owner of this real estate company, and they don't have time to sort through all the replies. So that's why they hire agents. So even though our business account is created with that owner, they don't want to sort through the emails. They want the agents to handle those emails, right? So if this seller as a company now wants to publish this ad, they wants these replies to be sent to this agent. Now, how are we gonna implement this in our model that we had earlier, which was very simple? One user publishes an ad, and whenever someone replies to this ad, replies get sent to the owner. But now we have an owner who's publishing an ad, and any replies that are posted to the ad needs to go to an agent, right? So that's the problem that Kleinanzeigen experienced at a certain time in the past. Now, I'm gonna simply jump to the solution that has been used to solve this problem. Again, I can try to guess why it was like this, but it will only be a guess because this was done years ago and so on. Legacy systems, right? So how was it implemented? So the way it was implemented is like this user, the seller on this side, they have this business account, and this business account published an ad with the ID 223. But notice the owner ID. The owner ID is different. The owner ID is now 124, but the user who owns this business account has ID 123. Why it was done like that? Because again, this is only my guess. I can only guess. I don't really know the reason, because many years ago many people have left the company and so on, knowledge gets lost and so on. The reason why this owner ID is 124 is because here we have already some logic which implements how to send the actual replies. It involves sending an email, constructing an email with the message that this buyer is sending, constructing a notification with this message, and then actually sending it to the seller, right? If we could just change this owner ID to 124, which is the user ID of this agent who's supposed to receive the replies, then we don't have to change any of the existing reply sending flow. The notification construction logic, the email sending logic, the receiver of that email, everything else remains the same. So if we just change the owner of this ad to 124, and this email then gets sent to agent at kleinanzeigen.de, which is the email of the agent, then the replies, whenever I as a buyer post a reply, it will be sent to that user, right? And this is how this whole implementation was working. Now you might say, okay, but who's the real owner? How do we track that, right? Because the person who's receiving the reply, even though we just made them owner, they're not the real owner, right? The real owner, in order to establish this real ownership, we introduce another field called business ID. And this business ID has this value 345. And this 345 is the ID of this business account. And so the real ownership is now implicitly enforced. This is not explicit. The explicit, when I just look at this ad, it feels like this 124 is the owner, but that's not the case. So when this user sends an application request. Also, the whole flow works where a real estate customer can designate another person, an agent, to receive replies. We allow this flow only via API creation request. Besides that, we also have another ad creation flow via website and via our app. Those flows don't support this mode of user assignment. So this only possible when requests are sent via API. This is also another important distinction which we will dig into in a bit. Right. So when we receive a request from this user via API saying, hey, I want to publish this ad on Kleinanzeigen, but I want all the replies posted to this ad to go to this agent at kleinanzeigen.de. What we did is like we made this user as the owner, and the email here is in kleinanzeigen.de, and then any replies posted to this ad got sent to this agent. Yeah. And so ownership was actually enforced via this 345 ID, right? So yeah, that's how it was working. But then one day, I think it was in 2020 or 2021, we got a customer complaint. One of the real estate users were complaining that, hey, I can see my ads. I know I created those ads by API request. I can edit them because I just noticed that there was a typo in the ad title, and I just edited the ad and I just saved it from my mobile device. But as soon as I do that, I started receiving the replies. I don't want to receive the replies. I want my agents to receive the replies. And we didn't understand why it was happening and or how this is happening. And when we look through the code, look through our Java code and look through our business process, we saw that the edit ad business process, like the edit ad flow that is implemented using our website, using our mobile app, this edit ad flow always assumed that whoever is editing the ad is the owner of the ad. And so this process was changing this owner ID from 124 to 123. And the email was getting set to seller at kleinanzeigen.de because that's the generic edit ad flow that worked for all different kind of ads. This specific requirement that we are seeing where replies need to be sent to an agent, this was for only for real estate users. Only real estate professional customers, real estate professionals wanted this feature. No other category professionals wanted this feature. So that's why this generic flow was setting the user owner ID back to the actual owner who owned this ad, who were editing that ad, and also to the email of the seller. And that's why they was receiving all the replies posted to this ad. Yeah. So this is where we see, right? So after this edit was done, owner ID was set back to 123 and email was sent to seller@kleinanzeigen.de. And we thought about, how about we modify the edit ad flow? But at a certain point, it started getting really uncomfortable because we were implementing a lot of exceptions in the code. And experience has taught us that whenever there are exceptions and we're trying to implement it as just another if block, that's where troubles started to happen. That's where bugs pop up, right? So in addition, we noticed that we have a strong security check in our edit ad flow, in our create ad flow, where the security check was ensuring that whoever is creating the ad, whoever is editing the ad is actually the owner of the ad. It really didn't sound a good idea to override that constraint just for real estate users. So we were then really thinking, okay, then how do we solve this problem? I will pause here for 1 minute just to ask if anyone has any questions or any problem understanding what we have discussed till now.
All
So
right.
any questions?
All right. I mean, your presentation seems very smooth. I'm really enjoying it. So far, we don't have any questions. But I have a questions, just popped on top of my head. I mean, I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to ask this question. Okay, so if your team had a model of a parent-child, sub-account relationships today, would that solve the problem?
No, no. The parent-child sub-account, I guess you were asking this because you've seen the slides down the line. No, no, no. This is we actually solve it in a bit different way. But the parent-child and the sub-accounts, well, sub-accounts that shouldn't have been created in the first place. But I will answer that question in a bit when we go to this parent-child
Okay,
sub-account.
no problem. You can skip it for now.
Oh,
All
no,
right,
yes.
go ahead. Continue.
Okay, then moving on. So this was one really critical learning for us that this business is constantly changing. So Kleinanzeigen is a business, is a very, very successful business, and it grew really, really fast. The growth was really amazing. And the initial model that we saw, which was really simpler, where a user posting ads and replies were getting sent to the owner and so on and so on, it worked. It worked amazingly at that time. But that assumption that we had initially, it changed over time because the business changed over time. So that's something that as a software engineers, we always have to keep in our mind that our business assumptions are always changing and we always have to adapt to the changing needs. This is one of the fundamental principles of domain-driven design, at least to me, that, hey, business is really important and I should really pay attention to the business rules the rules that is changing, and so on and so on, because they will have profound implication on the design of my system, on the design of my software, right? I know as a tech person, not everyone enjoys digging into business, but ultimately, at the end of the day, our goal is to really create business value for our users, right? Domain-driven design just pushes us towards that area where we actually, as a software engineers, become more interested in the business. Okay, as was mentioned, the thing called sub account. So as we saw, right, this business account has an owner, and this owner has an agent. Whenever this business account publishes an ad, this ad replies. Whoever posts a reply to this ad gets sent to this agent. We started to call this user a sub account of this business account. Why sub account? Sub, because I don't know, again, no historical reasons. I can only try to guess long time ago. But it was being called sub account. So sort of like this user maybe works closely with this business sub or something. Maybe that's why sub account. Anyway, but then our real estate business evolved even further. In Germany, there are some really big real estate companies, and they have a headquarter. Let's say some real estate companies, they will have a headquarter in Berlin, but they have agents, branches across Germany to many in many cities. Maybe one branch in Cologne, one branch in Munich, one branch in Düsseldorf. And what these real estate companies want, they want to buy our product using a single account, a single business account, but they also want their branches to have their own business account, because this business account, it also tracks how many ads are being published by a certain organization, right? And this headquarter wants to know how many ads Cologne branch is publishing, how many ads Munich branch is publishing, how many ads Düsseldorf branch is publishing. And when we went to that model, we designed it with a hierarchy of business account, not user account. So in our model, we have a business account, which we were calling parent. And this parent has an ID of 345, owned by this user 123, our very original user, seller at Kleinanzeigen.de. And this parent business account sometimes also published ads under using this business account credentials. And this parent business account now has a child business account. Maybe this business account represents the branch in Cologne, and it has a different ID, 346. They have their parent ID. Here, the parent is actually referring to the parent business account, not the user account. And this child business account also has an owner, right? So owner is actually the user account that owns that ad. Here is a slight error. Is owner ID says 123. I probably mistook it. It's not should not be 123. It should be 999 actually. So its owner ID here is 999 because the owner of this business account is this user, and these two are completely separate user. By the way, this user is actually the one which our users uses to actually log into our platform, and this user also has a password. So this business account doesn't have any way for which one can use to log into our platform, right? So this is a different user, this is a different user, right? Okay, and then this user, which is the agent, maybe works for headquarter. They are sub account of this seller, like the parent business account's owner. And what we discovered is like this sub account sometimes have their own business account, just to make things more more complicated, right? So what is this user then? This is a sub account? No, is this a owner account? Is this a business? What is this user, right? So we started really wondering who's parent? This is parent. Okay, this is child. Who's the sub account? Is this sub account of this business account? But they also have their own business account. So how does this work, right? And people were, I can tell you that when I first joined, I was always getting confused. What is child? What is sub? I sometimes thought this one is sub account, this one is child account, but no. But then we found out, no, that's not the case. This is actually child account. This is a sub account. This is a parent account, and then we had owner account. We sometimes used to call master account. Okay, who's the master account? This type of definition created confusion all the time throughout our team. Not only software devs, business people were also confused, and this is a telltale sign when a terminology, this sub account, parent account, business account, when these terms are not clearly defined, when they're ambiguous, when they invoke different image in different people's mind, something has gone wrong. When we are designing a software, the terminology that we use to name our classes or name our things, name our type. By the way, these stickies are not really classes. They are also not really table entities, but if you want, you can implement it as such. Um, but what is more important is think of it like a concept, important concept that we have in our business domain. So when the name of these concepts are confusing, they create confusion. They don't really mean a single particular thing, then that's creating a problem. I know my name is Sam. So whenever someone says Sam, I know I am being called, but let's say someone tries to call me as, hey, Ishraq, my son's name is Ishraq. I mean, then I will get confused, right? It's the same thing. One of the core teaching of domain-driven design is that it advocates to remove this ambiguity from the domain. It advocates for names, important names, to use names, such names that have a clearly well-defined meaning in a system. Why? Because then people like us will not be confused. That's the primary advantage. And in bookish term, they are called ubiquitous language, ubiquitous language. I don't know. I think I always pronounce them as ubiquitous language. If I have gone through an introductory article, domain-driven design, they'll say ubiquitous language is very important. It's use ambiguity, but oftentimes they fail to discuss why. This is we can see from here why, because if we don't have a properly, clearly identifiable name, then it creates confusion, and confusion results in bugs. Okay, another thing that was confusing is parent and child was explicitly mapped. Parent, child has an ID to parent. Okay, I can always write a recursive query, to go back to the database and just find out so on and so on. This the relationship is there in the code, but the sub account is completely implicit, because why this user became a sub account? Because they were supposed to receive a reply for this user published ad. That's why they became sub account, right? So this was completely implicit, and that also created a lot of problems. So learning was that the confusion over names may indicate a bigger problem. So there might be a disconnect in the understanding of the core business concept among multiple stakeholders, as we have just seen, only confusions, right? Okay, then things more interesting. One day, our data analyst came to us and said, look, this user, I'm really wondering about this user ID 124. I see that user ID 124 has a business account, and this business account, I see that they bought a product called Essential. And this Essential allows maximum two ads at a maximum two live ads at the same time, as we can see here as published. But whenever I try to query how many ads this user have, I see this user has 3 ads. Why? Our products allows 2, but this user is owner of 3 ads. Why? And when I look into the code why, we see that this user 124 has a product, okay, Essential, and they use that business account to publish 2 ads. One, this, one, this. But this user, who they're an owner of, is only because they are a sub account of this business account. And this information was not available in our data warehouse on our data lake and so on. So they were completely confused. Maximum 2, why 3? And that created not only a problem in a data analysis, because then they can really say, okay, then how am I gonna create a report saying, okay, how many business users publishing, how many ads and so on? It's really difficult. I don't have that information. We're saying, and we then suggested, okay, maybe we can somehow send this information to data warehouse and so other. But then we wondered, there may be other system who need this type of data. How many system do we then need to send this data to? That's quite a lot of work, right? And then one day, our marketing manager came to us and said, oh God, I cannot run our upselling campaign. Why? Because look, this user, they bought a product which allows a maximum 2 publication of ads, and they exhausted all their quota. They published all ads using that quota, but we have really interesting product which allows 5, right? So maybe they have exhausted the quota, maybe they need more. I want to reach out to this customer and say, hey, maybe perhaps you're interested in our quota which allows 5 ads. but they couldn't because this calculation was wrong. So we really couldn't really identify accurately how many ads this user actually owns, right? Because again, this information, sub-account information, was not available in our marketing software and so on. So we were not able to advertise our product. That means loss of revenue, right? Issues. And then we thought, okay, enough. Let's create a mapping. Let's create a mapping, explicit mapping between business account and sub account, and let's propagate everywhere in the company so that everyone knows who is child, who is business, and so on and so on. And what we did is like, okay, we have an importer API, which you customers already were using to send this type of real estate ad request. We sent an HTTP request via to, let's say, our ad creation service. This ad creation service was then sending a message to Kafka. In Kleinanzeigen, we use Kafka heavily. It's like a part of our core infrastructure. And with this Kafka, we created a new service, mapping service. This mapping service was saving this sub-account to business account mapping in a MySQL database. But then we thought, because one user can be a sub-account of only one business account, okay, let's save this mapping, right? Let's save this mapping. But then we discovered that this user, and so in conceptually, this is how it looks like. So the user and business account now has an explicit sub-account mapping. So this user is now a sub-account of this business account. So with this information, perhaps we can somehow calculate the actual quota that the user has used, right? I mean, we could get it from the business account, but this business account information was also not available, if I remember correctly. Okay, sub-account mapping is there. But then we noticed is that this user is sub-account of not only this business account, but another business account. And then we wondered, okay, why? Okay, this agent, are they doing like what is called like overwork? Like they are doing two full-time jobs at the same time? How can that be? But then we realized we have some users who are like a free agent. So they have contracts with multiple real estate agencies, and they get, maybe one real estate agency is trying to sell a really luxurious apartment, and they say, okay, and maybe they cannot find a suitable buyer. Then after trying for a bit, they then contact, let's say, another smaller agency, say, hey, if you can find me a buyer, then deal, I will give you a commission. And then say, okay, yeah. And this user says, yeah, I'm ready. Just send me all the replies. Similarly, maybe another company reach out to this user saying, hey, also help us finding a buyer. And this is how this user ended up being a sub account of multiple business accounts, right? So, and then we're confused. So we're going, okay, wait. This whole sub account, parent, child, master, owner, who am I? I'm a Simon. Yes, that's sometimes how I felt, with all this confusion, whether my name is Simon or not. But you get the picture. So it was totally confusing. Who is what? Who is sub? Who is parent? Who is child? It was always creating confusion. After seeing this, we thought, okay, let's not store this a mapping, because this is the technical solution. We're trying to solve them from a technical angle. Maybe this problem should be solved in different way, not using a technical mindset. And that's also another core learning of domain-driven design, that we will often encounter really complex business problems, business rules. And if we try to solve them from a technical perspective, like creating a map, right? It's a concept that we software engineers know. If we try to solve them from a technical standpoint, they may not yield the intended result. The result might be completely off, right? It's another important learning of domain-driven design. So business problem should be solved using business rules and so on. So business first. So I have to then, as a software engineer, have a deep understanding. What does my business need? My business user says, hey, I want to post an ad, replies need to be sent to a user. And do I have a deep understanding of that need? Do I really understand what my users really want? Business perspective, not from a technical perspective. And is the software that I'm writing is actually reflecting that need, right? So this is actually for me personally, is the essence of domain-driven design. Business first, users first. Think about in terms of users, what the users actually want, what type of business rules does our business have, and try to model them exactly as such, right? So this is the essence of domain-driven design. So this is another learning for us at the point is like, always prioritize users' needs. What does the user need? And in order to do that, we need to put ourselves in user shoes to find out, okay, how can I solve this problem more effectively from a business perspective? Now, the model that we have been seeing till now, these stickies, right? They are representing how our business rules are actually working, right? With examples, with relations, and so on and so on. This is actually what domain-driven design says, a domain model. And domain-driven design says this domain model is the core or the heart of a software, right? This is actually a fundamental idea of domain-driven design, domain model. Now, it doesn't have to be a sticky like this. It doesn't even have to be visual. It can be a completely long text where we've just written down how our specification works. It could also be that. So domain model is basically the idea or the representation of the business rules that we have in our business. This is the fundamental idea of domain-driven design. So domain model is an abstract representation of the business rules and requirements of the system we are trying to build. It doesn't necessarily have to be a formal diagram. This is not a formal diagram. This is something that our team came up at that time when trying to understand what is going wrong. And we later found that this has been extremely helpful at that time to find out all the inconsistencies. Because before we encountered this problem, we didn't have like an overview of what's actually going on. As soon as we started drawing them using stickies, things started to get more clearer and clearer and clearer, right? So this is not a formal. This is completely something. But it's heavily inspired by something called event storming. If it's a process is another process that sometimes people use to model big software processes. Is inspired by that, but not really like following event storming one to one, because event storming colors mean like they have they're different, they have events and so on, but here it's mostly concepts and so on. I fondly call it concept map. So this is sticky represent an important concept in our domain, and they're showing how the different concepts actually interacting with each other, how they actually relate with each other, right? So it doesn't have to be something formal. It can be completely something that a team could come up with. As long as it clarifies how the business is working, it's a domain model. And essential complexity is another important thing. Is like I think this term essential complexity and another related term accidental complexity was introduced by Fred Brooks. He was a really influential figure in computer science in 1996 in a talk or paper titled "No Silver Bullet." It has since become sort of like a legend or cult paper where everyone refers to. Really, a lot of insight in the paper. So in that paper or the talk, I think it was paper, Fred mentions that two terms between essential complexity and accidental complexity, and he uses the term essential complexity to refer to the complexity of the business, like the business that we are trying to build software for, like the rules that we saw. Agents want replies to be sent to a different user. These are the essential complexity of our system. And this is inherent to the business, and contrast that to accidental complexity. We're also going to talk about accidental complexity today. Accidental complexity happens where because of implementation. We'll look into the definition in a bit, but essential complexity is the complexity of our business. And the complexity that we're seeing, the different rules for real estate users, these are actually essential complexity in our business. And domain-driven design is actually a highly effective tool to tackle essential complexities, right? At least that's how I use it. So whenever I want to tackle essential complexities, if the domain is complex, I usually tend to fall back to domain-driven design or try to leverage domain-driven design to get a better understanding of what the business problem actually requires. Now, okay, enough about definition, but how do we solve our problems, right? Sub accounts, parent, child, confusion, edits needs to happen, and so on. Replies needs to be sent. But how do we solve that problem? I'm a big fan of Rebecca Rebsberg and Matthias Verais. Rebecca is a computer scientist, and she's been around in the computer science community since forever. Like she's like really experienced, is working in the field for a long time. I'm a great fan of her work. And she, together with Matthias Verais, Matthias is actually a founder of Ardling, a D&D consulting agency. He's also the founder of Domain Driven Design Europe Conference, a highly influential conference in the Domain Driven Design community. And they wrote some awesome articles together where they discuss several aspects of Domain Driven Design, ones that you do not usually find in a book or in a definition. They wrote them from their experience and so on. So this code is taken from one such article called Critically Engaging with Models, where they express this idea so beautifully that I just took it. And where Rebecca and Matthias says, like when a model, like our domain model that we just saw, puts us in a certain framing, right? How can we tell? How do we understand what framing a model imposes on us? How do we engage with any model? How can we evaluate it? Should we break out of that framing? Do we accept the model as is, or we use it as a scaffolding for finding better models that are better suited to our situation? So it's exactly, we're saying that, okay, our users want the replies to be sent to a user, and that's why we came up with the sub account. This is the model, but do we accept it as it is? Or should we try to find a better model, right? That's actually what we were asking ourselves at that time. And then we said, okay, look, pause for a bit. What does the business customer actually want? So this is the statement, right, that I wrote before. Like, hello, I can see my ads, I can edit them, but as soon as I do that, I start receiving replies. I don't want that. I only wanted to fix a typo in the ad title, but I want the replies to be sent to my agent, please, right? So I just highlighted the my agent part, right? So they were saying, okay, I have agents working for my company. I want them to handle my replies, not me. How about we rephrase it a bit? We say instead of agent, this user actually want these replies to send to a contact person. And that's when we had a big aha moment, right? So instead of creating it as an agent, what we did is like this is what the users wanted, right? So they posted an ad and they want these replies to be sent to that agent, sent to that agent. So instead of making them the owner, how about we create a new concept called contact person? So each ad then in this model has an associated contact person. Each contact person also has an ID because different ads have different contact person. They have an ad ID for which they are a contact person for 223, and the contact person has an email agent Kleinanzeigen.de, and this is completely separate from this user. This user account is something. This is a different user. It's Kleinanzeigen user. They log into our platform. They see the ads, but this contact person is different, completely different, right? So we modeled it as a contact person, and whenever we saw that when we're sending the replies, we had to modify the reply logic a bit in a slight in I think a few lines, so not really big change, and so on. We had to create a new service for that, but that's because of our organizational structure. But the actual flow didn't require that much of a change. So when an ad has a contact person, we send the replies to the contact person. If an ad doesn't have a contact person, that means we use our regular flow. We send it to the owner, and that's it. And with that, everything is solved. So editing an ad is no longer a problem. This user 123, edit as much as you like, no problem. The owner is gonna be set, but contact person won't be modified because contact person is only contact creation of a contact person is only possible when the ad creation request comes via API. It's not possible via regular website flow or the app flow. And that's also the API flow is actually where the user or the real estate professional user wanted to assign a different agent. It's also not possible via our regular web flow and mobile flow as well. So that's the only flow that need to be modified, right? So whenever an API request comes where an email, where the contact person of an email is different than the owner, we created a contact person. And whenever a reply was sent to the ad, we sent it to the contact person. So editing is no longer a problem. Using the website flow, using the common mobile flow, edit as much as you want. Contact person doesn't change. So whenever someone edited the ad, reply was sent to this contact person, and analysts were no longer confused. Ownership is now clear. This user ID is 124, owner ID 124. That means this user must be the owner. There is no any more users having more ads than they were supposed to, right? Product advertisement is no longer a problem. If this user has published one, we know that they have a maximum allowed quota of 2. They have published one, then maybe I can reach out to this user saying, hey, how about our bigger tier product, and so on. So it's no longer a problem. And parent child is also no longer a problem. We have a parent, we have a child, sub account is no more. Sub child, child sub, no longer any confusion. We have a parent, we have a child, and that's it. And we have a contact person. No longer a confusion. So the learning is that users often struggle to expect exactly what they want from our software, right? So putting ourselves in our user shoes may often lead to major breakthrough in software design, right? So this is why it's really, really important to understand the business process. And as a software engineer, we often find it really difficult, right, to understand the business rule. It's so boring. There is no tag, there is no messaging, there is no HTTP request, database involved, and so on. But ultimately, that's actually creates a lot of value for the business and creates software that is more maintainable than we could have done with a technical implementation. And having unambiguous and clearly defined names for all major business concepts help prevents bugs in our system that could arise from miscommunication or misunderstanding with software development. Parent, child, that's it. No longer any sub, no longer getting confused between sub or child. It's totally it's totally consistent, right? Contact person name also implies that okay, maybe they are the contact person for an ad. So unambiguous name is one of the fundamental principles of domain-driven design. Domain-driven design emphasizes that software engineers work very closely with our domain expert. By domain expert, think of them as business persons, people who really understand real estate domain. Work closely with them, create unambiguous, strictly defined name for each major concept in the business. This diagram, there is nothing technical about it. If you look at it, there is no class, no ER diagram, nothing. These are just stickies. You could argue that hey, ID is something technical. I would say no, because we humans, everyone understand ID. My passport has an ID. Bangladesh, we have national ID card, it has an ID. So every human is associated with the concept of ID, and they know why each concept has to have an ID, because we need to distinguish between Sam's passport and let's say my son Ishak's passport, right? So that's why they need ID. So there is nothing technical at all about this diagram. That's the best thing about it. I can just take this diagram, go to our real estate business development manager, and have a close conversation about is this example right? Is this how its relation is supposed to be? And then we can clarify major confusions, right? And the best of all is that the new model has been evolving naturally so far. And we saw that, okay, some real estate customers then came to us and, hey, when someone replies to my ad, I want to send 2 emails, not one. Send it to my agent, and maybe that agent is on sick leave. That's why I want to have a backup, agent K. I also want them to receive the replies. And it was easy. We just created another contact person. If we had stuck with the sub account model, then we could no longer do it, right? Yes, team. Rectangles, lines, understand for everyone. Team Schmolka is my colleague and who was also part of this refactoring. Yeah. So contact person, yeah. So we can create as many contact person as we want. In fact, if someone comes to us and say, "Hey, please," and another email, I track how many replies I receive for an ad. So when I receive when if you send the replies to a specific email address for my reply tracking software, it will count the number of replies. Really helpful, and it's possible. What is another thing is really possible is that okay, now that I know this user's ads is clear, it also unlocks a lot of product possibility here as well, right? So that's the best thing about modeling stuff close to the business, because oftentimes, not always the case, oftentimes the domain model that accurately represents the business often scales naturally to accommodate new business features without requiring major change to the software. In the top left, we see our old model, confusing and so on, inconsistent. On the bottom right, we see our new model, which doesn't have those level of confusion and so on. And best of all, we also got rid of unnecessary tech complexities, right? A lot of unnecessary tech complexities that we got rid of. Now, I will pause here for a bit. That's actually the example that we wanted to look at. There is still a major part that I'd really like to cover because reasons, as we will see in a bit. I just want to pause for a bit to see if there's any question. So far, no question. Okay, I will just go ahead and so on. Apologies, it might take a bit more than an hour, but I think it's really important for what I'm gonna say in the next few slides, because okay, domain driven is so important, so nice, brings so much benefit. Why don't we do it more often? Also, what prevents us from doing it more often, and so on? Besides, we software engineers are being interested in tech as well. That's not the only reasons we cannot do this kind of modeling, because of some reasons that I think. And if you as software engineers also have those things, or also have those reasons, that it will be difficult for you to spend time on domain modeling and brainstorming and finding out with the solution, because this also takes time, right? And the reason is, I'm going to come to this reason a bit, but I'm going to first of before that, I'm going to mention one of my all-time favorite talk called Choose Boring Technology. It was given by a person called Dan McKinley. And as I just took a screenshot from a website, so this talk got so popular, so popular that that Dan created a website out of this talk, and he says, I have largely come to terms with it and the reality that I will never escape its popularity. And he was right. I still refer to this talk every opportunity that I get. Why? We'll see in a bit. So in this talk, what Dan says is like, he mentions a famous hierarchy in psychology, in human psychology. It's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow, a psychologist, famous psychologist, he came up with some human behavioral stuff and so on, and came up with this hierarchy where he says, as humans, we can only spend time on higher level of satisfaction, like going to a movie, going to listen to a Shakespearean sonnet, or maybe going to an opera, if we have first taken care of our basic fundamental needs like eating, going to the bathroom, and so on and so on. If we always have to worry about what am I going to eat tomorrow, or and so on, that I won't have time for those intellectual needs, right? Similarly, if we as engineers are often keep bickering about, okay, how about Cassandra, how about Redis, how about Kafka, how about Kubernetes, how about what is the latest tech, AI, for example, let's say, I mean, not really against AI. AI also has its use. Let's say whatever the latest tech is coming up, right? If we always keep arguing about our latest tech, every latest tech that's coming out every week or month, we won't have time to ask interesting questions about our product. Does this product make sense? Does parent or child account, sub account make sense? Because we don't have time. We only work 8 hours, 10 hours a day. And after that, we go home. If we spend all of these 8 hours, 10 hours a day talking about tech stuff, we hardly have any time talking about asking intelligent question about our product, right? So attention is precious. This is what Dan says. We really have to figure out where actually we're putting our attention, right? If we are only putting our attention in tech stuff, then our product questions will get unanswered. Does that mean we should all stop about talking about tech and only talk about product? No, that also doesn't make any sense. But we have to find a balance. How? In this same talk, Dan mentioned something called an concept of an innovation token. I just asked Gemini to create something like a crypto-like token, and it came up with this, with the nice euro sign, even IT in the middle, right? So innovation token. So in that talk, Dan says that imagine the team that I'm working for or you're working for gets 7 innovation tokens every year. This team can spend this innovation token however they like. Think of these innovation tokens equivalent to focus or attention or time even. Now, ideally, I have to ideally what we should do, we should, let's say, spend two of this token for discussing about whether Cassandra makes sense, whether DynamoDB makes sense, whether Redis makes sense, whether Kafka makes sense, whether Kubernetes makes sense. But the rest of the 5, we should make sure to spend in such a way so that our products actually get done. We can work on new features. We can deliver value to our users. And if 2 sounds too little, okay, go for 3. But spend the rest of the 4 talking about intelligent product decisions. Does this make sense? Does this product direction make sense? Does parent-child sub-account make sense? Right? This is how we need to find balance. So it's up to the team to decide how much innovation token or how many innovation tokens they would like to spend talking about stuff. Another thing about technology is that any piece of technology, let's say today a new database got released. Let's say today Cassandra got released, right? So it's a new database just released today. And any piece of tech has two type of failure modes. One is like the failures that I know can happen. If I write a Java application, I know that Java application can run out of memory. So I try to make sure that it has enough memory. I also try to add some monitoring or alerting so that if my Java application start running out of memory because I'm adding more code, more stuff, I get some alert and then I can increase the memory. These kind of failures are called known unknowns. Things that I know can go wrong, unknowns, that's why unknowns, but I know that they can go wrong, that's why known. But there are another kind of failures that can happen with technology. Things I don't even know can go wrong. These are called unknown unknowns. Any boring tech, by boring tech, I mean tech that has been there for years. Example, Java has been there for years. Years. Any tech that has been there for years, people have explored that tech in detail. They have written a lot of blog posts about it. They have encountered failures. They have blogged about it. They have talked about it. So their unknown unknowns are really, really small. But when if Cassandra just got released today, it's a new technology. No one probably hasn't explored it that lot. Uh, yeah, Java. Of course, my primary strength is Java, right? I should bias everyone to use Java. No, any other mature language also be fine. I mean, Java's strength is Java has been really, really mature. People have literally shredded it apart. JVM, and internals and so on have and maturity, framework, ecosystem, build system, you just name about it. So there are so much things available for Java. You can do so many stuff, and its unknown unknowns are really, really small, right? So if something is broken in a production application, you can Google and you can immediately find a solution. But if you're trying to use a new shiny language that just came out 2 years ago, people haven't really had a chance to explore them, and they have a huge number of unknown unknowns. And so you build an application, you go live with it, something's broken, and the users are not getting the service, and you are just firefighting, trying to figure out what went wrong. So the more we think about only tech, just trying to adopt new tech every day or every month, every couple of months, every 6 months, every so on, we're going to have more and more unknown unknowns in our stuff. And next, microservice. I just had to dunk on microservice. No, just I just asked Gemini to create a architecture showing microservice architecture, and it just came up with this. I personally feel it captured the soul of microservice-oriented architecture. Really complex, right? So that's it. So maybe here, let's assume this here is ad service, this here is user service, this here is, I don't know, messaging service, this here is contact person service. Everything is a service. When someone wants to view an ad, user sends a request to, I don't know, ad service says, ads also needs some username. Okay, I'm going to send request to user service. Then ad says, ad also has view counter. How many times an ad has been viewed? I also need to display it. Okay, I call a view counter service. And then, okay, I also need to say, okay, how many times this ad has been bookmarked by someone? This is also a feature in Kleinanzeigen. Okay, I call a bookmark service. Service. After calling, I don't know, 10 to 12 different service, I create a response, I return to the user, right? That may be how a typical microservice architecture may look like in this case. And best of all, or not really best of all, sorry, worst of all, each of the service has their own database. Someone uses Cassandra, someone uses MySQL, someone uses Postgres, someone uses MongoDB, someone uses Redis, and so on. You name it. Just think about everything, because we are supposed to use best tool for the job, right? I think this best tool for the job suggestion have done so much damage over the past years that use the best tool for the job. That I can probably talk, I don't know, 24 hours about it, and I'm still not be done. Yes, of course. At least we're cloud native. Hey, so and it's like we're just getting microservice. Both will get a microservice. Tim get a microservice. Sam get a microservice. You all get a microservice, right? So we are just getting microservices. But the problem is that this is also a quote taken from one of my all-time favorite talks, Debugging Under Fire. Keep your head when systems have lost their mind, presented by Brian Cantrill. I'm a big fan of his talk. Brian is a legend in the software engineering community. He was one of the authors of dtrace. It was developed in Sun Microsystem. dtrace is a dynamically tracing solution that can actually provide us insight with what's actually happening in a core operating system in real time, right? It's really interesting piece of tech. And I think he also used to be CEO of Giant, CTO of Giant at that time when he gave this talk. Really influential figure. Right now, he's working as a CTO of Oxide Computer Company, where they're creating fully customizable, observable server rack. Really interesting stuff. So in that talk, Brian says that the paradox of microservices is we are attracted to them for their simplicity, because small microservice, add microservice don't have that many code, right? View counter microservice that don't have that many code. So small code, easy to reason about, right? Developers are like, oh, wow, I get to reason about a much smaller problem, which is true and great. But they yield a more complicated system because we just saw more complicated, more connections, more things can go wrong, right? And there is a famous set of research done by someone called Richard Iko. He's actually a physician, but he's done a lot of work on the system safety, on the safety of complex system that are applicable to also software system. And microservice is a architecture is a complex system, and where he writes down some of the fundamental characteristics of complex systems or how they fail. I would like to point to these 3 points where he says complex systems contain changing mixture of failures latent with them. Complex systems run in degraded mode. Catastrophe is always just around the corner. Now, how exactly? What does that mean even? I try to create a simple example showing how, what. So let's imagine we have a microservice-oriented architecture, service A calling service B via HTTP request, right? Someone decided to create two microservices by extracting a monolith. One service call another service, everything's fine. HTTP request, we are getting a response. Then maybe one day they will notice, okay, some HTTP requests are timing out, or it's not receiving any response, because one of the fallacies of distributed system, this is also another important, some interesting research about them, like it's famous, called 7 fallacies of distributed system, edited by L. Peter Deutsch, where the first fallacy was that the network is reliable. People always think that, okay, when I call service from another service, they will always succeed. That cannot be more wrong, because network is oftentimes fails. Network has congestions. Network has lots of issues. Switches as wrong. The most fragile part of a microservice oriented or any distributed system architecture is the network. And because of network issues, HTTP request can fail. And then we just think, hey, okay, let's add a retry. If a request doesn't succeed, let's retry another time, right? If the request doesn't succeed within 1 second or 2 seconds, 1 second, let's say, because we also added a timeout, right? Because we want to know how when we get a response. Because if we don't get a response, I'm just wait for like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, that's going to create other problems. So let's say we added a retry. We wait for the first request in 1 second. If it doesn't succeed, we send another request. If it also doesn't succeed within 1 second, we send another request, and so on and so on. Now, let's say this service B is not only sending a serving request for service A, we have service C, service D. They're all sending HTTP requests, or they don't even have to. Only service is enough, for our example. Now, let's say for some reason, service B is suddenly experiencing performance degradation. It usually responds within 1 second, but because maybe it has its own database, and for some reason, it's also having problem connected to its own database, or maybe someone created a performance bug. For many reasons, hundreds of reasons that could be there. But for some reason, the service B is now experiencing slowdown, and it's taking because resilience has literally, yeah, now it fails 5 times before giving up. Exactly. Okay, so imagine what's happening. So service A sent a request. It waited 1 second and it didn't get any response. But service B received that request. It's just that previously it used to take it 1 second to respond. Now it takes 8 seconds to process the same request because it's experiencing performance breakdown. But service A doesn't know that. It just saw, okay, 1 second, I didn't get any response. Retry another time. Now service B is servicing 2 requests, both of them taking 8 seconds, creating performance degradation problem even worse. 1 second later, second request fails, but both of them being processed in service B. Now service A sends another request, 3. Now service B is processing 3 requests, right? A performance degradation got become worse, and so on and so on. So imagine now what happens, right? So after a certain point, service B simply cannot sustain this increased load because it's already experiencing performance issues, and now it's kaboom, it's completely gone under that heavy load. right? It's simply gone. It's just gone. Now, when service B is gone, service A was sending so many requests. Perhaps service B was also experiencing a sudden surge of requests, and service A was just passing all those loads to service B. What happens to service A? Now it doesn't have a service to pass the load on to. It's also gonna go kaboom. And that's how people, we end up with a catastrophic failure. I just described a one very simple example of what can go wrong in a microservice oriented architecture. There are hundreds of ways things can go failure, and now we understand what Richard I. Cook was saying, that complex system will always contain some mixture of failures, and we were trying to defend against that failure by adding retries, and by doing so we often end up making situation even worse, right? And these complex interactions are so difficult to debug in production. Even if we have the right tool, and they require a completely different set of tools, different set of mindsets. I know many companies are not, probably because they don't have, let's say, enough funding. Let's say startup, just trying to be profitable, right? They may not have enough funding to invest in their tooling, to invest in their infrastructure, to invest in the monitoring. They might not have the right tooling. How are they supposed to investigate this kind of issues, right? And this is why people say this microservice architecture results in an exponential increase in unknown unknowns, because we have just increased the failure, things that the number of failures that can go wrong. Just take these five set of services. Application one can be down for some reason, and service 2, 4, 3, 5 can be up. That's one mode of failure. Application one is healthy, two is down, 1, 3, 1, 3, 5, 4 are up. So if I now count it like this, there are 120 ways these five services can go down. And there are another factorial 4 ways the network between them can go down. How many failure mode is that? I think probably we're above 1,000, right? So, and now when we try to debug, this is also a quote from the same talk from Brian, where he says, we replaced our monolith with microservices so that every outage could be more like an active shooter. Right? So someone is shooting, blah, 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 and now we're trying to hide, we're trying to figure out what's going wrong, and so on and so on. You don't have a clue. Users are complaining, hey, my service are down, my service are down, do something, I don't get my service. What are you gonna do, right? A lot of firefighting. So what ends up happening in this architecture, we spend 6 of our tokens simply firefighting, and we have, if we are lucky, we have only 1 token for asking intelligent question about our business. So when do we have time to talk about parent-child sub-account? Does this mean microservices are always wrong? No, that's also not the case. That's also not what I'm saying. Microservices do have their usage, but I suspect not as widely as we have seen in the past few years, right? And the reason I think personally is that we have seen them is because it has something to do with interest rate. Because from 2010 to 2020, both US Federal Reserve, is the central bank of US, and European Central Bank has kept interest rates to a historically low. Anyone wanted could get a cheap loan at any moment from these banks, right? And when you have cheap money available, what do? You take a lot of loans and you just hire people like crazy. And you need people for firefighting, just hire more people, right? And just throw them at the firefighting, and they do all the firefighting for you. So I suspect, again, this is only my guess. I don't really know if this is the case or not, but I suspect, even if not the only reason, but at least partially, this historically low interest rate have resulted in microservice-oriented architecture where each service is an entity, or even worst case, one entity distributed into 5 services, or step functions, as people call them, and so on. But since 2022, interest rates are no longer low. Now they are really high, and that's when things get interesting. If now teams cannot take any loan any longer to hire more people to do the firefighting, they really want to be profitable. Now they need to ask interesting product questions. What are they going to do? Right? So that's the issue. Now, as we have seen, a perfect example of accidental complexity. So the accidental complexity is any complexity that is not inherent to the business for which we are building the software, right? It arises from technical implementation. Microservice architecture by default results in a lot of accidental complexities. And one of the learnings, most is not only to domain-driven design, but any is like We should always tackle essential complexities head on. Essential complexity is our business complexities. They are our bread and butter. So we should really try to complex model them as such, right? But we should always keep accidental complexities as minimum as possible, right? As minimum, we will never be able to get rid of them, but we should try to keep them as minimum as possible, even if that means making compromises to choosing simpler solutions. Now, how do we build software with DDD? Um, so let's say we have a domain model, and what we should try to do, we should try to put our technical choices around the domain model. We should really get our domain model right, and we should try to implement our technical choices around it and try to prevent our technical choices leaking into domain model. This will not always be successful. We will not always be able to prevent technical choices leaking into domain model, but we should always try as much as we can. Now, again, DDD is also not a silver bullet. When to use DDD? When there is a complex business route involved, when there is a strong need to collaborate with business stakeholders and so on, when we're working in this large organization which requires complex systems, building collaboration between multiple teams, and so on and so on. Now that we understand the fundamental principles about domain-driven design, feel free to use it as much as you don't even have to use the whole thing. Even if you partial use is also fine, right? And this is the picture that we've seen earlier, and I'm pretty sure there will be thousands, if not if there will be hundreds, if not thousands of articles who will explain what these things does. As long as we have a proper understanding of domain-driven design is trying to do, running them, implementing them should not be a really big issue. Now, since I'm presenting this talk, I must have done all the work, right? I'm like this 100x engineer who did everything. No, that's not really the case. I'm probably not a point X engineer. So we did it as a team, and it's only fair that we meet also the rest of the team. So that's why I wanted to introduce you the rest of the team who did all the sub account refactoring and so on and so forth. So on the left side, you see Helena Young, who is now a senior software engineer at Kleinanzeigen. Tim Smolka, he's an engineering manager. I'm pretty sure he's present somewhere. I saw a message from him. And Olivia Dill, she's product manager at Kleinanzeigen. Katya Westphal, he's head of product right now at Added Value Service. And the smiling guy at the bottom, Konrad Kamposki, head of engineering at Real Estate. And finally, also thanks to Joran Rees, who's our senior product manager, who revised the slides just to make sure that okay, things are in order. Pierre Dubois, who designed this Kleinanzeigen info sheet. He's our head of external communications. And again to Conrad, and finally to our CTO Manuel Aldana, who provided a lot of historical context about Kleinanzeigen and so on, its growth and so on, how does the model grow and so on and so on. So that concludes my long talk. Now, if you have any question, I will be happy to answer them. I'm just gonna stop my share.
All right. I mean, you have done such a great job that we're still in a reflection mode. We're reflecting on what we have just shared with us. So what I can take from the whole session is, naming things is hard, right?
Of course, hardest problem.
Yeah, there is a quote, I think. It says something like that. There is only two hard things in computer science. One is cache invalidation, and another is naming things. So yeah, I mean, we need to focus more, energy, I think, or thinking ability on naming things. End of the day, it's language that matters. I totally understand that. For some reason, as a technical personality, we don't always focus on language. End of the day, it's the most essential things, right? How we communicate. It doesn't have to be, for example, as a technical personality, sometimes we focus not to communicate with peoples, right? I mean, with things, code can talks, yeah, but that's essentially not true. um, End of the day, we are making things, trying to make our others people's life better, but then how we are going to do that unless we know that we can properly communicate the essence of it. All right. So I don't think we have any more questions. I mean, everyone is reflecting on your, excellent presentations. Thank you for doing that. Yeah. All right. So that brings us to the end of our session. I mean, huge thanks to you for sharing such a valuable real world insight on the domain driven design. At least it piqued my interest. So I will look into uh, this more. And a big thank you to all of you in the audience for joining today. We appreciate your time, attention, and participation. We hope you found it insightful and have a wonderful rest of your day.